today is co-owner and chef of Just Chocolate, Michael Fatah. Chef Mike graduated from the Culinary Institute of America in Hyde Park, New York, and the American Institute of Baking in Manhattan, Kansas, for baking science and technology. Chef Mike established his career in this industry doing consulting work and teaching about cooking with cannabinoids. Michael is going back to basics and discussing the importance of dosage. Please welcome Michael Fatah.
All right, thank you, everybody. I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself and how I got started in this industry. As Ron mentioned, I'm a graduate of the CIA. When I was a faculty member at Le Cordon Bleu Schools International, I had a student come up to me and ask me about edibles, because her mom had suffered from cancer at the time. And this was back in 2004. And that experience allowed me to investigate a little bit more, do some research for her, help her medicate her mom with edibles. In 2009, I started to travel from all of the states, and basically I'm one of the few chefs that's been from Alaska to Maine, traveling and educating, talking about edibles, teaching infusions, helping people with the math, and questions and what sorts. So I created a career out of that. I took all of that knowledge and I brought back creating edibles in Florida. I was one of the first ones to create a chocolate-infused CBD edible in Florida and have FDA compliant labeling, packaging, everything that was regulated by our Department of Health. I continue to operate that business, now called Just Chocolate, and now I pretty much travel, educate, do forums and CBD events such as these. So what are you going to hear today? Today I'm going to go through 5 or 6 slides about the basics of math. What is 1 gram equals 1,000 milligrams. And that's where the math starts. All of our edibles throughout the country, whether you're a medical marijuana state or an adult use state, all of your edibles are dosed out in milligrams. 100 milligrams is the standard serving, divided by 10 milligrams per serving, 10 pieces to a bar, 100 milligrams total. So that's what I'm going to teach you all today. And then at the end, if you all have any questions or anything like that, raise questions, I'll answer, we'll go from there, okay? All right. So the first slide is basic practices, know the math. 1 gram equals 1,000 milligrams. Okay, so percentage of potency, whether it's a distillate, an isolate, or a flour, okay? If you're using a distillate, now use the example, 1 gram of distillate purchased at your local dispensary will or should have percentage of potency printed on it. So we're in Las Vegas. We all know we can go to a dispensary, we can buy a 1 gram cartridge, and that will say 76 to 86% THC. So if you look at the example I have, 1,000 milligrams, if the cartridge happens to be 90%, then that means you have 900 usable milligrams. So if you took that RSO oil cartridge and you made a pan of brownies, you would add that, you would have 900 milligrams. Now what people get confused is now you divide that by the serving sizes. So you see here, for the simple math, if I take 900 milligrams and divide that by 10 servings, that means each piece has 90 milligrams. Does that make sense? So that's the easiest form. You can buy your RSO oils, you can buy them in a syringe, you can infuse them into your edibles, whatever you make, whether you buy a box of Duncan Hines off the counter, whether you have your own favorite grandma's cookie recipe. It's one of the easiest forms, okay? The next one I discuss is using flour, smokable flour. So if you're somebody who likes flour, the percentages are different, they're quite lower. 15 to 30% is the general range of cannabis across the industry. Again, we're in Las Vegas. A lot of that is printed right on your label. It's right on your jar. So you know that cannabis you have is, say, for the example for the slide, is 20%. So again, if I multiply 20 by 1,000 milligrams, that means my smokable flour is giving me 200 usable milligrams. Quite lower than using distillate. And we know why, because it's a process where you've taken the flour and you've processed that through to make the distillate. So if you're using your flour, you see here, you'll have 200 usable milligrams. Again, if I divide by the simple number of 10, that means each piece is 20 milligrams. Okay? So it doesn't change as long as you know that 1 gram is 1,000 milligrams and you know what your percentage is, whether you're using a distillate, flour, or the next, which is divided into milliliters. 1 second. Oh, isolate, same thing. Whether you're using a distillate, isolate, or flour, you're always just going to divide by the number of milligrams and then your servings. So for example here, if I have 950 milligrams and I divide by the number of servings of 10 for my cookies, each piece is 95 milligrams. That's it. It really is the basics. For a lot of people I talk to, this is just a great starting point. What gets complicated is what are you infusing your product into? If you're making cookies, are you infusing it into a butter? Are you infusing it into a coconut oil? Are you using another type of fat? Are you trying to make it emulsify it into a drink? So that's where it gets complicated. But really the easiest part, it's really the math. As long as you know 1 gram is 1,000 milligrams, and then you know your potency, and then you divide by your number of servings. If you ate that whole pan of brownies that we discussed earlier, well, that would be a heck of an experience at 900 milligrams. But you know if you divide it by 10, each piece is dosed out at 90. Any questions so far? You sure? Okay. That is pretty much my presentation. Because basically what I do now is I leave it up to all of you if you have any questions as far as businesses, infusions, any particular recipes that you've done and have trouble with. You asked me about looking at your COA, so we can talk about that as well. And we can go from there. Does anybody in the audience have any questions?